So welcome to our chapter 1 quadratic equation, and we are now on our lesson 3 for chapter 1 quadratic equation. So lesson 3 talks about solving quadratic equations by completing the square. So what does that mean when we say completing the square? So something that is not a square, and we have yet to make it a square. So that makes it completing the square. So we have here a math fact. We have to know that we have to put in mind that there are quadratic equations that can be solved directly by factorization, okay, which is in our lesson 1. Okay, so that is why we need to find another method if in case a certain quadratic equation is not factorable. So completing the square helps us to solve that. So when we say completing the square, so here we have x squared plus 10x plus 5. So what must be the third term or the value of c so that this becomes a square? Okay, so what we do is we try to put it here. Then we know that x squared can be factored as x times x. Now 10x, okay, 10x must be evenly distributed in these two spaces here. So we have 10x. If we're going to divide it by 2, you have 5x and 5x. So question is, what must be here? Okay, and that is the blank. So what we do is, as you can see, this is x. What must be the value here? And the same thing as here. Since we know that 5x, the product is 5x, and we have x, that makes it 5 here. Since this is a square, that also makes it 5 here. So as you can see, x plus 5, the side of the shape is x plus 5, the another side is x plus 5, so that makes it a square. So we are able to make it a square. So let's continue. That makes it, since this is 5 and this is 5, that makes this 25. So it means that this blank must be 25, so that x squared plus 10x plus 25 will become a square. Okay, in turn, if we're going to factor that one, this gives us x plus 5 times x plus 5. If we turn it into a square form, it's like saying that x plus 5 square. So that is the idea of completing the square. So the same with x squared plus 5x plus blank. So we will put x squared, and we will put 5x. We'll divide 5x into 2 because we're going to put that evenly here. So this is 5 over 2x, then 5 over 2x. We know that 5 over 2x plus 5 over 2x is 5x. So we know that this is simply x and x. X and x is x squared. Now what we do is, what must be here so that the result is 5 over 2x. So blank times x equals 5 over 2x. That makes it here 5 over 2. And that makes it also here 5 over 2. Multiplying 5 over 2 and 5 over 2, you have 25 over 4. So that makes it 25 over 4. So how to factor it? Go back to this and go back to this. You'll have x plus 5 over 2, x plus 5 over 2, and in turn you can say that that is x plus 5 over 2 square. So that is the idea of completing the square. So let's go to our first example of quadratic equation, solving quadratic equation by completing the square. So we have here x squared minus x squared plus 8x minus 2 equals 0. What we do is we isolate first the the negative 2 because the negative 2 makes it not a square, and we have to make a way to make it a square. So eventually this becomes plus 2 in both sides. We will have negative 2, then here becomes 8x, then x squared plus 8. So this in this case we are trying to just what we did a while ago. Here we are going to make the left side of the expression, okay, we're going to make side the left side of the equation a square. Okay, so how do we do that? Yes, we simply add something on that left hand side. Okay, we need to add something on that left hand side of the equation. Since we are adding something on that left hand side, we need to add the same amount, the same quantity on that right hand side. Okay, so now as what we discussed a while ago, we have to complete the square of the left hand side. We know that that is x squared, and the 8x must be 4x and 4x. So that gives us x and x, then 4 and 4, and that gives us 4 times 4, that gives us 16. So this must be 16 and this must be 16. So we have here, if we're going to factor x squared plus 8x plus 16, we can factor that as this one and this one. So that is x plus 4, and this one is positive 14. In turn, we can say that this is x plus 4 squared equals 14. In this case, when we make the left-hand side equation as a square, this is the time that we extract the square root. So extract the square root here. We also extract the square root here, resulting to x plus 4 equals the positive square root of 14, and that is 3.04. 3.74. Okay, so now this is the time that we solve for our value of x. 1 will be x plus 4 equals the positive square root, and the other one is x plus 4 equals the negative square root. Solving for x, we have minus 4 and minus 4, so we have x equals negative 0.26. This is our first solution. The other solution is minus 4, then minus 4, x is negative 7.74. That gives our next solutions. So the solutions of our equation x squared plus 8x minus 2 equals 0 are negative 0.26 and negative 7.74. So we have here number 2, x squared plus 3x minus 5. It's the same thing. We need to isolate the value of c, which is negative 5, because that is the responsible why this equation is not a perfect square. So we need to make the left hand side a perfect square. So plus 5 plus 5. So we have x squared plus 3x, and we need to add a quantity, that is 5, and we need to add the quantity. Okay, So what do we need to add? We need to try to look at here. This is x squared, and we need to divide 3x into 2, and that is 3 over 2x and 3 over 2x. Okay. So that gives our factors on top. We have x and x for x squared. To make 3 over 2x from x, we need to multiply it. We need to multiply x by 3 over 2 and 3 over 2. So multiplying 3 and 3 over 3 halves and 3 halves, you have 9 over 4. This gives us our 9 over 4. So if we're going to factor this one, we'll just go back to our frame there. So that is x plus 3 over 2, x plus 3 over 2, and that is, this one is 29 over 4. So if we're going to make it a square, we have x plus 3 over 2 square equals 29 over 4, and we need to extract the square root now. Okay. So we have now x plus 1.5, if we say so, and the square root of 29 over 4 is 2.69. That's positive and negative 2.69. So this time we solve for x. 1 for the positive square root, which is 2.69, and the other for the negative square root, 2.69. Okay. So we have here, subtract both sides by 1.5, so x becomes 1.19. So this is our first solution. And here we subtract 1.59, so x becomes negative 4.19. Okay, the solutions of our equation are 1.19 and negative 4.19. So that is basically how we solve it by completing the square. So we have here x squared minus 9x minus 1 equals 0. The same procedure. This becomes x squared minus 9x plus something that will make it a square, isolating negative 1, that becomes positive 1, and adding the same thing. So let's try. So we have here x squared, and that is x of x and x. We need to divide 9 in 2. So that's 9 over 2 here and 9 over 2 here. So to get 9 over 2x, x times something to get 9 over 2x, therefore this is 9 over 2, and the same thing, since this is square, this must be 9 over 2. Multiplying 9 over 2 and 9 over 2 to get our final quantity inside that will make it a square, this is 81 over 4. So this one is 81 over 4, and this one is 81 over 4. So in this case, we can now factor. So this is simply our factors. So we have x mhm, minus, because our sign is minus, 9 over 2, x minus 9 over 2. So this is actually negative and negative because the sign is negative, equals, that gives us, this one is 85 over 4. So making it a square, we have x minus 9 over 2 square equals 85 over 4. Extracting the square root, you will have um, x minus 9 over 2, and that is, what is the square root of 85? That is 4.61, positive 4.61. So we can simply turn 9 over to into 4.5. This is x 4.5 plus minus 4.61. So solving both, one for the positive and one for the negative. Okay, so this here, adding 4.5 to both sides of this equation will get 9.11, and this one, adding both sides to the adding 4.5 to both sides of the equation, here we have x equals negative 0.11. Okay, that is the solution of our um, equation x squared minus 9x minus 1 equals 0. Okay, so we have here 2x squared minus 8x minus 1. We have to get rid of 2 by dividing it by 2. Not really get rid, but simply make the coefficient, okay, so of x squared equals 1. So before we proceed to um, completing the square, we need to make sure that the value of a, obviously that's ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. The value of a must be 1. Okay, before we proceed. So, as you can see in our previous examples, let's go back. The value of a is 1, meaning the coefficient here is 1. The value of a is again 1. The value of a is again 1. So here we need to make it the value of a equals 1 by dividing each term by 2. Okay, so the resulting equation will become x squared minus 4x minus 1 half equals 0. So this is the time that we go back to the usual one. We need to isolate negative 1 half. So we have x squared minus 4x. We need to add something. We need to add something. So what is that? So obviously, as you can see, um, the idea is just like this. That's x square, then x and x. So the idea is take the half of b, which is that going to be, that makes it negative 2x and negative 2x. Then the on top becomes negative 2 and this one negative 2. So the idea is take the half of b, then square it, because when you say negative 2 times negative 2, it's like negative 2 square. Okay. So negative 2 square is positive 4. So that makes it here plus 4 and plus 4. So here we go. We can now factor this into x minus, just go back to the frame on the right side. That's x minus 2, then x minus 2. And we have, this is 9 over 4, 9 over 2. Making it a square, we have x minus 2 square equals 9 over 2. Then after that, we extract the square root. So you have x minus 2 is equals to the square root of positive and negative square root of 9 over 2 is simply 2.12. So we have, this is the time now that we solve for x, one for the positive square root, which is positive 2.12, and the other one is for the negative, which is negative 2.12. Solving for x, which is plus 2 and plus 2, you'll have a 4.12, which is our first solution, and plus 2 and plus 2, you have x equals negative 0.12, which is as our second solution. So let's try with our number 5. Okay, so we have here 3x, the same. Let's set it that the value of a must be 1. Here the value of a is 3. Okay, so we need to divide each term by 3. Okay, so this one gives us x squared minus 1/3 x minus 1 equals 0. So what we do is we complete the square. Okay, so we have x squared. We need to isolate the negative 1 by adding positive 1 to both sides. So we need to add something, quantity that will make the left hand side a square, and the same must be added to the right hand side of the equation. So let's try. If we're going to do that, this becomes x squared. So we need to cut 1/3 into 1/3 x into 2. Okay, so that is simply saying 1/3 x divided by 2, and that is 1/3 x times 1/2, and that is simply, since this is negative and negative, so this is simply saying that each of this must be negative 1/6x. Okay, so 1/3, cut it into 2, that's 1/6. So this is negative 1/6x, negative 1/6x. So now we try now to factor. Okay, we know that x squared is x and x. So what must be, so here and what must be here, so that the result, what must be multiplied to x so that the result is negative 1/6x, and obviously that is negative 1/6, because let's go back to the idea a while ago, because if you're going to multiply this and that, you'll get this. So this is also negative 1/6. So in turn, to get our final space for this, for that one, this one, we need to multiply negative 1/6 and negative 1/6, and that is positive 1/36. Okay, so this now, our square now is completed, so that gives us 1/36. 36. 1 over 36. Okay, so or simply you can use the idea of take the half of the value of b, then square it. Okay, but that is just too short. That's just a shortcut for everything that here. So this one we are showing that that's the idea of completing the square. So we have now a square. So how do you factor that one? Go back to your frame here. Let's go back here. So let us just erase this. So we have now x minus 1/6 times x minus 1/6. That is simply, this one is simply 37 over 36. So making it a square. Okay, so after that we extract the square root. We simply extract the square root. We have, so we have x minus, we may actually turn this into decimal. That is 0.17. The 1/6 is 0.17, and the square root of 37 divided by 36 is just 1.01. Positive and negative 1.01. And solving this, the same procedure, we have x minus 0.17 equals the positive, and x minus 0.17 equals the negative. Okay, solving for x, adding 0.17 to both sides, we will have 1.18. Okay, so here adding 0.17 to both sides, we will have that is negative 0.84, negative 0.84, and that is our second solution for this. So that is our last. There are cases wherein, let me just go through it. Like this. So let's try. If this happens, okay, sometimes not all quadratic equation has real solutions. So this one is, let's see if this one is an example. Okay, so negative 2 equals negative 7. So here we have, if we're going to make it a square, we need to have minus 2x plus something that will make this a square, and the same must be added to the right hand side. So a short how to get this portion is simply b over 2 square. So what's the value of b? Negative 2. Divide by 2 square, so that is 1. Means this is 1. Means this is 1. So here comes the, if you're not comfortable with this one, you may use the frame. This one. Okay. So we already added 1 to both sides, so it's time to factor. It's time to factor our left hand side and turn it into a square. Okay, if we're going to factor it, this becomes x minus 1 x minus 1 equals negative 6. So here comes the focus here. I want you to focus on this part. So if we're going to do this, let's highlight this part. You'll have x minus 1 square equals negative 6. Sorry for the not alignment of equal signs. After we extract the square root, we will have this. We will actually eventually have this x minus 1. Extract the square root, extract the square root. You have positive and negative square root of negative 6. Square root of negatives is not a real number. Meaning, if you're going to evaluate that using a calculator, okay, the calculator will simply tell you it's a mathematical error. So, we cannot get the square root of negative 6. Meaning, this one, if after we extract the square root, we encounter of getting the square root of a negative number, this means that we do not need to continue. We do not need to continue here. This means that this equation has no real solution. There is a solution, but it's not real. The solutions are imaginary. Okay? So, because when you say in the number system, we have on top the complex, then real numbers and imaginary numbers. The real numbers is the one we used to, and the imaginary numbers are like this as examples, the square root of a negative number. So what we're trying to look at is eventually in quadratic equation, you're simply trying to look at in this level we're trying to look at the real solutions of quadratic equations. And in this case, since we encountered getting the square root of a negative number, which is square root of negative 6, which we cannot really get that, the equation has no real solution. So you just simply write, okay, this equation has no real solutions. I think that's all for our lesson 3.